Your nervous system isn't broken. That's the first thing I want you to hear today. Because if you spend enough time online, you'll start to believe that something is wrong with you, that you're dysregulated, burnt out, stuck in fight or flight mode. And while those experiences are very real, I sometimes wonder if all this talk about fixing ourselves causes us to forget something important. What if you're not broken? What if you're simply overwhelmed? What if your mind and body have been carrying more than they were ever meant to carry? Today, many people are searching for ways to regulate their nervous system. They're looking for calm, for balance, for a way to feel like themselves again. And while the language may be new, the experience itself is not. Long before people were talking about nervous system regulation, traditional Reiki practitioners were observing something very similar. People who felt disconnected from themselves, people who struggled to rest, people whose minds wouldn't slow down, people who had forgotten what it felt like to simply be. And rather than beginning with the question, how do we fix this? Reiki begins with a different question. How do we listen? So, I'd like to share what traditional Reiki understands about modern overwhelm and why sometimes the path back to balance begins not with fixing, but with reconnecting. The phrase nervous system regulation seems to be everywhere these days. People are talking about stress, burnout, overstimulation, and feeling stuck in fight or flight mode. And while there is certainly value in understanding what's happening in the body, I think many of us already know what overwhelm feels like without needing a scientific explanation. We feel it when we wake up tired, even after a full night's sleep. We feel it when our mind keeps running long after the day is over. We feel it when we are constantly consuming information, but rarely have a moment to sit quietly with ourselves. The world moves quickly. There is always another notification, another email, another headline, another thing demanding our attention. And over time, that constant input can leave us feeling disconnected. Disconnected from our bodies, disconnected from our intuition, disconnected from the quiet inner knowledge that tells us when we need rest, when we need space, and when we need to simply slow down. The interesting thing is that while the language may have changed, the experience itself is not new. Human beings have always experienced worry. They have always experienced uncertainty. They have always carried emotional burdens. What may be different today is the sheer amount of stimulation we encounter every day and how little opportunity we give ourselves to pause. And perhaps that's why so many people are searching for ways to regulate their nervous system. Not because they're broken, but because they're longing to feel at home within themselves again. Long before people were talking about nervous system regulation, Reiki practitioners were observing something remarkably simple. When people are stressed, they naturally place their hands on themselves. Think about it for a moment. When you have a headache, where do your hands go? Usually to your forehead. When you're worried or anxious, many people instinctively place a hand on their stomach. When something shocks you, your hand often goes straight to your chest. And when a child falls and starts to cry, what is one of the first things a parent does? They place a hand where it hurts. Not because they've studied anatomy, not because someone taught them a technique, but because it feels natural. It's almost as though human beings already know that touch has a way of bringing comfort, reassurance, and connection. Traditional Reiki begins with that simple observation. Rather than asking us to do something complicated, Reiki invites us to pay attention to something we may have forgotten. The wisdom of placing our hands on ourselves, the wisdom of becoming still, the wisdom of listening. In many ways, Reiki doesn't start by adding something new to our lives. It starts by helping us reconnect with something that has always been there, something deeply human, something deeply natural. And perhaps that's one reason Reiki has resonated with so many people around the world. Not because it asks us to become someone else, but because it gently invites us back to ourselves. So rather than spending more time talking about it, I'd like to invite you to experience a little of this for yourself. Not complicated, nothing you need to do perfectly. Just a few moments to pause. Place your hands on your body and notice what happens when you give yourself permission to listen. If you're driving or doing something that requires your attention, you can simply listen. But if you're somewhere comfortable, perhaps you can join me. There is nothing you need to achieve, nothing you need to feel, and nothing you need to do perfectly. Just follow along as best as you can. Let's begin by placing our hands gently over our eyes. As you do, notice what happens. Notice the warmth of your hands. Notice the contact. Notice the simple act of pausing. Take a slow, comfortable breath and then another. You don't need to clear your mind. You don't need to relax. Just notice. Notice yourself. Now, if it feels comfortable, bring your hands to the center of your chest. Many people naturally place their hands here when they feel emotional, grateful, or deeply moved. Again, there is nothing to fix, nothing to change. Just allow yourself to be here for a moment. Breathing naturally, listening quietly. And now, bring your hands to your lower abdomen. In traditional Japanese Reiki, this area is often called Tanden. It is considered the body's center, a place associated with grounding, stability, and presence. Allow your hands to rest comfortably here. Take another slow breath and simply notice. Notice how your body feels. Notice how your breathing feels. Notice what has changed, or perhaps what hasn't changed. Both are perfectly fine. What we've done together is very simple. No special equipment, no complicated techniques, just a few moments of stillness, a few moments of touch, a few moments of listening. And yet, for many people, these simple moments can feel surprisingly meaningful. If you'd like to explore this practice further, I'll link some of our guided Reiki self-healing sessions above and in the description below, where you can spend more time with these and other traditional hand positions. You may have noticed something during that short practice, or perhaps you didn't, and that's perfectly okay. Some people feel calmer almost immediately. Others become aware of how busy their minds have been. Some notice tension they hadn't realized they were carrying. And some simply enjoy having a few quiet moments in an otherwise busy day. There is no right experience. There is no scorecard. And there is certainly no need to force anything. What I find interesting is that many of the things people describe after a Reiki practice are the very things so many people are searching for today. A sense of calm, a sense of grounding, a sense of being more present, a sense of feeling like themselves again. Today, some people might describe that as helping the nervous system settle. Traditional Reiki uses different language, but perhaps it is pointing toward a similar experience. Not an experience of becoming someone new, but an experience of returning to ourselves, returning to the present moment, returning to the body, returning to the simple awareness that is often buried beneath the noise of everyday life. And maybe that's why such a simple practice can feel surprisingly powerful. Because the modern world constantly asks for our attention, Reiki invites us to bring some of that attention back to ourselves. Not in a selfish way, not because the world doesn't matter, but because when we are disconnected from ourselves, it's difficult to feel connected to anything else. And when we take even a few moments to pause, listen, and reconnect, something begins to shift. Not because we forced it, but because we finally gave it space. So let's return to where we began. Your nervous system isn't broken. At least, that's not where traditional Reiki begins. Reiki doesn't begin with the assumption that something is wrong with you. It doesn't begin with fixing. It begins with listening. Listening to the body, listening to the breath, listening to the quiet wisdom that is often drowned out by the pace of everyday life. One of the things I appreciate most about traditional Reiki is its simplicity. In a world that constantly tells us to do more, learn more, improve more, and fix more, Reiki offers a different invitation. Pause. Place your hands on yourself. Listen. And remember that balance is not something you create. It is something you return to. Perhaps that is what so many people are searching for when they talk about nervous system regulation. Not perfection, not the absence of stress, but a way to come back to themselves again and again. And if Reiki can help us do that, even for a few moments each day, I think that's a beautiful place to begin. If this is your first time here, welcome. On this channel, we explore traditional Japanese Reiki and practical ways to bring more balance, awareness, and connection into everyday life. If that resonates with you, I'd love to have you subscribe and join us. And if you'd like to learn more about the traditional teachings of Reiki, you'll find links below to the Japan Reiki Association, guided self healing practices, and additional resources to support your journey. Until next time, take care of yourself. And remember, sometimes the path back to balance begins not with fixing, but with listening. ありがとうございます。